can this be done without the cultural shift? There seems to be some people saying yes or no. I want to be clear on this, because I mean, I've known a lot of developers, I've known a lot of operational people, and they tend to be very different in the way they approach their job, and obviously their job is very different. So, you know, DevOps says there's a cultural shift necessary. Can DevOps be fully leveraged without the cultural shift of making these people work far closer than they ever have worked? Andy, your sense of that?
Look, I don't think you can do this without the cultural change. And the cultural change has to be driven in a lot of ways from above, because what you're talking about with operations and developers and QA and other people having different goal sets, that comes from management. And you know, to Damon's point, that's a structural deficiency in getting teams to work together, is when you have them having conflicting goals. So you've got to change that. If you just try and do it with, you know, technology, if you just try to do it within one or two groups, then I think you're going to fail. You're going to end up running into passive non-compliance. You're going to end up just moving the bottleneck. That's one of the things I see in larger organizations, especially. If you only change within dev, for example, or you only change within ops, or even both of those, then maybe you're just shifting the bottleneck into QA, you're shifting the bottleneck into HR, into training, into front office support. Shifting the bottleneck doesn't help. So you've got to change the culture and the way everyone's looking at delivering new functionality. And you've got to have everyone on board to deliver faster, to have seamless handoffs, to automate more, to get, you know, hands off a little bit more, to let people do all their job. And otherwise, yeah, you're going to get this sort of passive non-compliance where people sort of nod their head in the team meeting, then go back to their desk and do exactly what they've been doing before.
I think it's really important to point out too that, you know, culture is one of these greatly misunderstood terms, probably as much as even DevOps is. And so, you know, when we talk about culture, people think it's like, you know, the HR folks with their posters on the wall and they want you to come to the company picnic and, you know, or, you know, the happy hour or wear the hoodie. You know, they don't really understand. I mean, that's probably not a lot of hoodies in corporate America, but you get my point. And I think really all we're saying by you have to attack the culture, to change the culture, not attack the culture is a bad word, to change the culture, it's really just saying we have to change how people work. We have to change how, you know, how they do their day-to-day work, and also how they see their role in the organization. As JP said, what their mission, you know, what their goal is. So, you know, a lot of that really breaks down to, you know, well, yeah, it's those two things. They have to understand they need to work differently, right? So, for example, in a large enterprise, you have folks that believe they're writing software. They believe, and then the ops folks believe they have to operate software. The reality is you're writing services, you're creating services. So the idea that we're going to wait to test it later, that we're going to wait to put the automation in later, that we're going to wait to try it out on a production-like configuration or platform till later, is just ludicrous, right? I mean, it's just not common sense. But if you come to yourselves, hey, we're service developers, so therefore, of course, I'm going to write the deployment scripts and the automation tests, and of course, I'm going to do everything just like I would be deploying my service in my dev environments, because by the time it gets to, I'm sorry, Lori, to make you the ops person in all these examples, but by the time it gets to Lori, it's just as the features are the running, the automation, the tests, the monitoring is just as important to the application as the functional code is. So therefore, I need to be writing that and testing that and working with that in a standard sort of platform, standard tooling all the way through, you know, my life cycle. And my life cycle needs to be a lot shorter because I want to have that instant fast feedback. So, you know, when you start to think of it that way, is what's the ideal way for my organization to work to achieve our goal? Then, you know, the culture thing sorts itself out, because that's really what we're talking about. But if you don't change how people work, if you think you're going to fix this by, you know, doing a reorg, which is probably the most demoralizing things we see, if people just, you know, oh great, here comes DevOps, here comes another reorg, or hey, I'm just going to have the release management people, you know, brand themselves DevOps and, you know, whitewash all their tools, you know, with the DevOps name on it, you really aren't going to get anywhere. It's just not going to happen. It's just like in the Agile revolution. Or Agile is a good example, or going back to lean in manufacturing. Those that just did hey, we're going to use the lean tools. We're going to, you know, lean tools. We're going to call things with lean names. They never got the benefit.
Well, I think there's an issue there with the idea of cultural change being someone else's responsibility. You know, when you talk about changing the culture of the organization, it's like you're waiting for that to happen elsewhere. And I think it's important, you know, what you were saying, to get the attitudinal change at the individual level. Individuals have to change the way they think and the way they operate. If you just say, oh, it's a cultural change, then you can fall into that trap of thinking, it's HR's job to do that, or it's the CIO's job to do that. Whereas DevOps, it seems to me that the cultural change has to be personal. There has to be a change in attitudes and how you work with people.
Yeah, managers love talking about culture, but nobody in an organization, none of the line folks give a crap about culture. It's like, hey, I show up, I do my job, and I go home. Hopefully it's an enjoyable and rewarding experience, and I get paid a lot of money for it. But I don't want to hear about your, culture mantra. Like that's your problem.
And so I break it down actually into three specific things, right? Accountability, incentive, and directives. Those are the three things that need to come down from, as a package to the IT environment, and that will drive how they behave. And in much way, any of these, elsewhere in the organization, it's how sales is driven, it's how marketing is driven, it's how production is driven. It's used everywhere else in the enterprise except for IT. They are missing those three essential elements.
Right. Can I? Oh, go ahead, Lori. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Part of the cultural problem too is that we call it DevOps. And we focus specifically on operations or dev. But the reason that we have things like software-defined networking right now and all of these new things on the network side is because they recognize that they're quickly becoming the bottleneck in this whole delivery process for the application. So they have to do something. And it's all about the same thing. It's about automating, it's about changing how you deploy, how you test, how you actually manage the network when it's scaling out and you're trying to get it to market. By calling it DevOps, these people are scared and they are resisting hard because they hear dev, well, that's development and I have to write code, and it's ops. Well, that's somebody else's problem. Keep that away from me. I'm just going to keep doing it the way I am. And they can't, because otherwise they will be, that roadblock that stops those apps going any further when the business needs to get it out. So, by kind of focusing on the dev and the ops aspects and getting too detailed about tools and methodologies from development, we're not going to allow that cultural change to happen across IT, and it needs to happen all the way across IT, not just in ops and dev. It's got to go all the way.